Debbie, first of all, tell us your name and where you live. Oh yeah, the Metroplex, right? Dallas. Yeah, she's the only one who's Dallas. And I want you to tell me kind of how you got started with Listen to God.
Okay. Debbie Smith, and I'm here in Dallas. And my husband worked for Leadership Network, which most of you, I think, might know what that is. And my husband works there, along with Leslie Dawson, and her husband was working there at the time. And we were invited to that first group of women here in Dallas as wives. They just said that we could come. Anyway, that first time I went through it, it was so phenomenal for me. I really was stuck. I was kind of in midlife. My kids were leaving, and I was just crying. And we left the young life that we've been with for our whole adult life. And so we had lots of changes, and it came during this time that I was introduced to Listen to My Life, and it was very powerful, and it really got me unstuck. And the thing that came out of it is that this was the venue I wanted to do ministry with. It kind of had all the bits and pieces from my life. So that was real exciting. So I immediately wanted to take it to my church. And I was not that involved with it at that point. The cool thing, which I'll come back in a minute, is that the women's pastor was at that, who I had never even met, and several other women. So I've never had to go explain to people at my church what it is. So,
right. So how did you go from doing it at Leadership Network to actually doing it? And you didn't start off at your church, you did it at your house for a while, didn't you, or no?
I did not in the beginning, no.
Okay,
no,
so tell us how you transitioned from Leadership Network to what you're doing now.
Well, first I went through 3 of the Leadership Network times. I just kept going back because I needed the repetition. I wanted to get a better grasp of it. I knew I loved it, but I didn't have my own words. And a year after I had started, my church invited Sybil and Sharon to come down and do the first half of the maps. And so that was the first women's event I've even been to at my church. And what happened was they did several of the maps, of the first maps, and then whoever wanted to continue when we went back, I led a weekly class with it, and I had 2 different groups. So that's kind of how it got going at my church and me doing it.
And so, like, how many people were in these groups and stuff that you were?
They were small. All of mine have been fairly small. We learned a lot at the retreat about what works and what doesn't work. And it was kind of a venue where people didn't know what they were coming for or where it was headed. So they were just small groups. I mean, 2 and 3, I think, were the 2 groups.
But you make this a really personal process. I mean, you've had people to your house and stuff like that. So tell us about that.
Yes. The Lord just began to bring different connections at church, and they would hear about what I was doing because I talked about it all the time, and people got excited when they heard about it. And so I had some individuals that would come to my house, and we'd just meet like once a month. I continued usually having 1 to 2 groups in the fall and the spring semester since '08. And I did do the weekend format, the 2 weekends with some friends that live in different parts of Texas, so that was kind of fun. So in the beginning, I was trying to figure out which doors were going to be open. You know, will I do it outside of my church? Will I do it at my church? And mostly I've done it at my church.
That's awesome. So what's been sort of the hardest thing, or one of the things you've learned the hard way in this process? I like girls that take notes. I take lots of notes.
I know, when you said to bring a 4x6 card.
8.5 by 11 is just fine. We like 11 by 17 too.
I think the hardest thing for me was total surrender and reliance on God. I have lots of health issues, and I have ADHD, which I know can be funny, and I try to get people to laugh at it because it's better than crying about it. But it's really, I have it very severely, and it's very hard if I cannot concentrate enough and not be distracted long enough to give somebody information, and that's the struggle that I have. But that makes me rely on God. I mean, there's always going to be things that make it harder for us, and that's probably my hardest thing. And the thing I had to do with that, instead of feeling humiliated at times, that I just became humble and went, oh well, and could move on. And that really turned it around for me, of not getting really frustrated. Like, God, why did you call me to this if I can't even get the information out? And so that's the thing I struggle with, and I assume I'm always going to have it, I don't know. But God's been healing me physically in lots of ways to where I have more energy and I'm doing more. I have two groups right now with their bigger groups and trying to develop a team, which Polita here is my team. And Leslie and I did it together at my church last fall. And Leslie and I have been praying since '07 probably to do it together. And it's not time yet, and I hated that I got a taste of it because it made it really hard for her not to come back. So we're going to keep working on that.
And what's been the most fun or the biggest breakthrough or?
It's always the women.
Down the top 10.
It's, I mean, my mission statement is to set people free to be who God created them to be. And I'm very passionate about freedom. Freedom is my word. So it doesn't matter what they need free from. It may be physical, it may be mental, it may be relational, all kinds of ways. And when all of a sudden you see on their face that they got it, and they have something to let go of. Oh, I had a lady in the fall who I did not interact with much because we had a bigger group. She was just real quiet, and I never really ended up in hardly any conversation with her, so I didn't know her story. On the last night we got up, I said, does anybody want to just share about this experience that God taught you, whatever? And she shot up, and her whole table was clapping their hands. They were a group that would not listen. There was 5 of them. They would not get in 2s, 3s, or 4s. They always adjusted the time. And they were doing so great. I knew God was doing big stuff, and so I didn't bug them. But they all knew exactly why she was going to stand up because of her story. And this is someone who, since she was a little girl, was devalued beyond belief. And had been through 3 significant bouts of wanting to take her life. And she had been in one. Coming into this, and she just stood up and started saying, I want to live. I have a story to tell. And it was so fun. And her team was like, yes. I mean, as soon as I said, does anyone want to tell part of their story, they would just look at her like, you said you wanted to do that. And it's just the most precious thing. And last week I invited her to come to both of my groups and tell her story. I cannot tell you how excited this lady was. She was hilarious. She was really shy, really quiet, and she was just animated and going crazy, and she was so happy, and she looked different. She walked in the room, and I was like, you're a totally different person, because she had been freed. And
I think a significant part of that is she's a grandmother. So when you think about that journey of 3 times in her life, anyway, I just want to add that. That's a big woman we're talking about. She's
Well, speaking of precious things, Debbie was amazing. So any other questions for her about what she did or how she did it as a sort of a volunteer in her church that you would post her? Deetra.
I just wondered, when you brought this lady into your group, at what point did she share her story with
we were introducing the Valley Nap, and for her to tell her story, the whole thing is a valley. And so I just gave her the time, and it was really fun not to worry about what she was going to do, because she was so excited, and she knew that she needed to tell her story.
How long did she share?
20 minutes.
Okay.
We gave her 20 minutes, and she had it memorized. I mean, gosh, I can't imagine getting up and really knowing what I'm actually going to say compared to what I wrote down. And she didn't have any notes. Oh, yes, she did. She did have notes, but she just barely glanced at them. And she had rehearsed. She had the exact same motions when she got to it. It was so precious, because think how much courage that took if you were really shy to get up and act out something. I'm not kidding. It was crazy. And the ladies in both classes, nobody knew her. You just can't believe the reaction after she left. I mean, why they were there, and then they just went crazy at the impact that she had. It was unbelievable.
Anybody else? And the other thing I'll tell you about Debbie is all the flowers and all the table decorations and all the pottery and every little detail, the bookmarks. I mean, I don't even know all the details, but I'm just so thankful for Debbie and the rest of the team. So let's do
I need to say that my daughter did the bookmarks, wrote it out for me. My husband bought the flowers. I told him what to go get, and he came back with these, which was and the pottery, and some of it is Sharon's, but a lot of this is the pottery she made when she was in college. So it was so fun to bring it.
Oh, I bet she liked that you were bringing